Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, I thought we'd do another thrift store haul full of Blu-rays, DVDs, books, etc. I've uh, I've been trying to watch the movies before I review them when I'm doing these thrift store hauls to make it a little bit more interesting. So I've done that. So all the movies that I'm going to go through here, I've watched since I've purchased them at a thrift store. I've watched them. So you'll notice that these thrift store hauls are going to be a little bit slower coming because it takes a while for me to watch the movies before I review them on this, let's say, this type of video, right? So, all right, and we got a bunch of books to get through as well. I got more stuff as well, but I haven't watched yet. So as I get through it, I'll review it. So let's get to it. Let's do some books first. I thought we'd do some books and then we'd do some movies and then end with a bit of books as well. All right. So the first book is the Way of the Samurai. All right. Basically, so this book here, all right, this book was originally called Bushido, or The Soul of Japan. So basically, it's, the fighting spirit of the Japanese, right? And this was written by Inazo and Natobi, all right? So, and it's part of the FSC, sorry, the Arcturus group of books, those lower cost books that you get. Uh, in my area, they put them on a table and they're, discounted. This one was originally $6, right? So they're all discounted books of classics in literature, right? So they're very popular with people. So what I do with them is I just collect when I find them, I'll collect them and put them in an ad 10 at a time and sell them for like $30. Uh, and they sell pretty easily at that price. So they're nice editions. They're not like high-end editions, but it's a good way to read classic literature on a budget, right? So, anyways, but this book I thought I would talk about a bit because it basically tells you, the whole code of the samurai, right? A samurai basically was, in older Japan, he was the military and protectorate of a shogun or like an aristocratic man in Japan who owned land, right? And then he would have an army or a force underneath him, and those would be uh, samurai, right? So, and there was a code that all samurai lived by, and which is obviously to protect their master, all right? And there was a code that they treated each other with. So, it's one of the earlier, most vigorous type of military codes that you could have, right? Um, and there's a romanticism about the samurai in Western culture because of that, right? So um, I myself uh, feel that romanticism whenever I watch a movie or read a book about the samurai. Like there was a movie I just watched recently on Netflix, um, which was about 47 Ronin. The remake with Keanu Reeves from the Japanese film, the original Japanese film, 47 Ronin, right? That was all about the Japanese samurai. They lose their master through nefarious means, and so then they rebel or whatever, right? So, um, and another one, with Tom Cruise, The Last Samurai. That was the transition of Japan away from the samurai class into more of a military and business class, right? So you can see the romanticism in it. But basically, you are an indentured servant. Basically, is what you are to another person, right? And I've always had a problem with that, just instinctually. Really, I can understand the attraction of it. I mean, you have a similar idea and code in most militaries around the world, but now it's not a person that you're defending; it's a country, right? Um, so there is that. I don't know if it's human nature to be that way, but I think it might be that some people are meant. They have a strong code. I'm very much of a stoic myself, and there's a lot of stoicism in the way the military behaves, right? So, uh, but I've always had this inner thing about I just have an extreme difficult time with another person having authority over me. You understand what I'm saying? Uh, it may be from my upbringing and how the authority figures in my life were not that, let's say, respectable. Um, uh, they seem to have their own interests uh, above mine. If you want, uh, if I can put something simply, if I have a piece of advice in this situation, is if you do want to be a leader, which I never have wanted, I would rather walk beside somebody than lead somebody. Um, uh, then there are certain things that you need to do. And one of the things you need to do is you need to put the person that you're leading or the people that you're leading's needs ahead of your own. Otherwise, you're basically a tyrant. One's a leader, the other one's a tyrant, right? So, so there's a whole code that it goes through in this thing, but I still have I have difficulty, giving up my free will to the lead of another person when I look at that person and they're no better than I am. And I've never met anybody that's better than I am. It's not egotistical. It's just I know that if I enter the realm of mathematics, there's going to be people that are better at mathematics than me. I know that in the realm of philosophy, there's going to be somebody that knows more, you know, uh, smarter than me in philosophy or in any other subject, right? And I may be good at some subjects, but there's always going to be somebody else that's better at that subject than me. Now, is there such a person that is a better leader than me? Well, that would depend on like I said, one of the tenets would be the easiest thing to describe whether you should follow somebody or not is whether they have your interest ahead of their own, right? If their interest is secondary to yours, then yeah, that's less of a bad deal, let's put it that way. But I just have a difficulty with any of that. I would prefer um, I don't want anybody under me and I don't want anybody above me. I would like to have everybody beside me, right? So um, this is not a, a thought process for a leadership type of idea, but it seems like human beings are like genetically encoded to having a hierarchy, right? Right? It's the only way to make anything efficiently move forward, right? I mean, if you have too many chefs, there's that saying, too many chefs, not enough cooks, right? So you need a head chef to direct everything. So you need a director. Every situation where human beings come together are that way, except for maybe a cooperative, right? So um, I just have difficulty. I can't look at another human being and think he's better than me, and then because he's better than me, that I should follow him. I just can't do it. Even if he is better than me in things, like he could kick my ass, or he could, um, you know, run faster than me, or whatever. He could be better than me at everything, and I still wouldn't follow him because his free will is no different than my free will. You understand? So if he wants to get something accomplished that involves me, then he needs my consent to do it, right? And a leadership means that you have to give them their consent, basically blanket your consent. All right. Now, do you do this in real life? I do. Obviously, everybody else does. So I may be talking like I'm a hypocrite or something, but in order to get through, I mean, I can't, be a revolutionary every part of my life, and I do take a leadership role in my family, right? So, but if you're asking me philosophically, um, like in what I have control over, like my immediate surroundings, my immediate environment, um, I don't want to lead anybody, and I don't want anybody to lead me. I'd rather have them beside me because I'm no better of a human being than they are, and they're no better of a human being than I am. We both have consent. We both have choice, right? So whether they're better at something than me or I'm better at something than them doesn't make them any less of a human being, and therefore have to give their rights over to me just because I know more, right? You understand what I mean? They still need to get my consent, right? In everything, right? So um, that's where I'm at presently thinking, anyways, about this. So I don't think I could ever be a samurai. I don't think I could ever take that code and apply it unless it's that code is with the brethren, right? Where everybody in it is looking out for everybody else, which is kind of like what the army is, but then they still have that hierarchy where you have to listen to somebody above you, right? So, Um, uh, so some codes in the samurai, some codes in the military, I find very attractive. Others I don't. And that blind, I mean, you know why it's there, and it makes sense that it's there. That the chain of command is there for a reason because you just don't have time to argue shit out and before you get things done because by that time, your enemy is going to overrun you, right? So you need that hierarchy because efficiency is a very high on the list of things you need to be when you're fighting in a war. Okay, so but that I understand that, but I just have difficulty having anybody rule over me in any way because I just don't think of anybody as any better than me. I mean, because they're not. I mean, they may be better at doing things than me, but they're not better at choosing what I think is best for me. Right? I'm not a child anymore, and I'm adult. I don't need my parents to tell me what is right and what is wrong. I know what's right and what it's wrong for me. So it always has to be a consent thing, right? So, um, but saying all that, it is one hell of a read. So if you like, the Japanese way of thinking and Bushido, that whole philosophy, and the samurai, you will really enjoy that read. So if you find this book, pick it up. All right. So that's the way of the samurai. Next up is Tibetan folktales. Basically, what's his name there? Frederick and Audrey Hyde Chambers go to Tibet and record a bunch of the Tibetan folktales that have permeated the culture in Tibet for thousands of years, right? So if you want to get an insight into more Eastern type of literature and philosophy, that kind of thing, this is a good book to read as well. All right. Now we have Gunter Grass, the meeting at the meeting at Talgit. All right, all right. It's a nice hardcover. Gunter Grass sells well. I found this for $4, so I thought I'd be able to sell it again. And uh, it's one of the early editions of it. Now, if you've noticed, nobody's ever protected it, so you'll notice that this originally was white, right? So now it's kind of yellowing, and you can see really the higher yellowing. So it's good to protect your books. All right. I don't know much about that because I haven't read it. All right. And then I found this for $4, and that's the Oxford Companion to Philosophy. Now, Oxford and Cambridge, the two British universities, have companions, right? Oxford's is more in depth than Cambridge's. Cambridge is more, they're more paperbacks than hardcovers, and Oxford are all these really thick tomes. All right, but basically anything you want to know about philosophy, it's in here. All right, so you just have to go to the glossary. But basically, uh, these have become passe, I guess. The Oxford and Cambridge. People still like reading books. All right, so they'll actually pick up a physical book. Maybe they'll pick up, Aristotle's Ethics or Poetics or whatever, or Plato's The Republic or something, right? And other philosophical books, and they'll read them. But when they're looking for questions on them or answering questions or can't figure something out, where they'll usually go is to their phone or to the internet, all right? And then they'll go looking for it there. So these companions, dictionaries, thesauruses, and all those type of reference books have become mostly passe, right? So people don't buy them much anymore. Like if I was to sell this book 20 years ago, I could probably sell it. New, it's probably like $50 or $60. I could probably sell it for like 30. But nowadays, I'll be lucky if I can sell this for 10. But because it's philosophy, and philosophy is a very easily sold subject in books, I think I may be able to sell this and not have it sit on my shelf forever, right? It's a great reference. And if you, thing I want to iterate for anybody that's watching this is Wikipedia is getting pretty good. Okay, so its referencing and everything is like an encyclopedia. It's basically an online encyclopedia. But there's always falseness in Wikipedia. You understand? Um, Whereas if you pick this up and you refer to it, uh, the scholarship is here. All right, the scholarship and the knowledge is here. Um, Less so on Wikipedia, right? So if you were to refer to Wikipedia, you will get your references incorrect more often than if you were to get it from a print media, especially from a university that has been around since the beginning of time or whatever. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean, right? So, so these Oxford Companions of, let's say, world history, Oxford Companion to Canadian Literature is another one. These all are really great reference uh, references to you. So what I used this book for mostly was to look through, get an overview of philosophy and how to start reading it, right? So what it basically points to you, if you're reading Western philosophy anyways, it points back to the early Greek, the pre-Socratic philosophers, then you got like Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, and then you move on from there. You know what I mean? So you're going from Greece first, and then you're heading out from there, right? So um, this kind of was the companion to a lot of the reading that I read. And so when I saw it for $4, I said, screw it, I'm going to pick it up. And I'm going to see if I can sell it for $10. If I can, then I'll know when I see it again, I can pick it up and sell it again. So I just need to test the market on that. So $4, I'll test the market on it for $4, right? So, all right. So that's the Oxford Companion to Philosophy. They have companions for almost every subject matter, right? All right. So next up is the Histories by Herodotus. All right. Ignorant intellectual. Is that how you pronounce his name? Heroda, Herodotus. Anyways, I just look foolish whenever I try to pronounce Greek names, right? So Herodotus. Is that how you pronounce it? All right. So this basically is his history of the Persian invasion of the Hellenistic world. Like when Persia kind of like decided to try to take over all the city states in Greece, right? So and they all joined together to fight back against the Persian hordes. Let's put it that way. Anyways, he describes this, but in this you know ancient book that the Penguins Classics are so famous for putting out, right? So basically, it's basically the Persian War with Greece, or the city states of Greece, Athens and Sparta and that kind of thing. And but it seems what is most interesting about that is he goes through that, but then he goes off on these tangents about other stuff, and they're kind of like anecdotal things the things that were happening during that time, and they're quite interesting to read. So if you haven't read this book, pick it up. All right, so that's a Penguin Classic, and whenever I see a Penguin Classic in really good condition, I'll always pick it up because it will usually sell. All right, and then I found this book. All right, Alexander of Macedon. All right, a historical biography. And this is by what's his name? Peter Green from University of California. All right, so this is University of California Press, and Peter Green is the Dowatree Centennial Professor Emeritus of Classics at the University of Texas. All right, so the University of California published this, but it's written by a professor from the University of Texas, and basically he does a biography of Alexander the Great, Aristotle's student and the man who took over you know so much of the world during this time back in like you know in the mid 350s BC, right? Uh, so uh, so I haven't read the book, but that's what the book is about. So it's supposed to be really good if you like ancient literature. So all right, so that's that one. What's up next up? Oh yeah, this one. If you haven't read any books by John Steinbeck, East of Eden would be a good one to start with. It's his retelling of what Genesis, the Adam and Eve story, and then they had Cain and Abel, and Cain murdered Abel, that kind of thing. It goes through that, but it's in where is this set? In California, I think. Yeah, so the Salinas Valley in Northern California. Yeah, Salinas Valley. All right, so basically retells the story of Cain and Abel, about the jealousy that that Cain had for Abel. Everything's so easy for Abel. Everybody's loved Abel, and Cain has this darkness in him and decides to murder his brother, right? Well, that kind of plays out in this in a more modern version, all right? And it's one of Steinbeck's best novels, all right? So if you haven't read it, I would not stop you from doing so, all right? All right, next up after that, okay, so let's stop and let's do some movies, all right? So this is the last movie I just watched, and that is My Own Private Idaho by Gus Van Sant. Gus Van Sant, quite a good director, all right? This one is one of his earlier films, and it stars Keanu Reeves as a young man and River Phoenix before his untimely early death. And it basically, they play two hustlers, street prostitutes, um, who eventually, when you finally get to the end of it, River Phoenix ends up with Keanu Reeves and they go search for his mother, right? So, but basically, it's a pretty fucked up film or screwy film, right? These guys, this guy's a street hustler. You can pick him up and he'll, blow you for $50 or whatever. And, he gets together with a whole bunch of other street people to do some robberies and things like that. And so it's kind of like, oh, and he also has narcolepsy. So he just falls asleep in any kind of stressful time. So that's kind of interesting as well. And he kind of turns into his protector. He watches out for him a bit. But see, he is not really a street guy. He's slumming it basically. So his father is the mayor of the town that they in Portland. I think he's the mayor of Portland, if I remember correctly. And he's a wealthy kid, but he decides to throw away his richness and become like street trash, like all the people that he hangs around with, right? So it's quite an interesting look into that world, and Gus Van Sant does a pretty good job on it. But I think some people watching this will be like offended. My main thing about it is I just don't understand the point of the film, but it's a good film. I mean, it's an interesting story. If that's the reason why it is, then cool. But I prefer his other films more than this one, right? So, all right. So that's My Own Private Idaho. Next up is Daughters of Darkness, a film by Henry Kumel. All right. So this is a Blue Underground edition. Before they started putting out the Blu-rays, they put out DVDs, and this is basically about a newlywed couple that end up in Belgium. I think it's Belgium, if I remember correctly. And they're at a hotel, and it's off season, so there's nobody there. And then this elderly woman and her assistant show up at the hotel as well, and they're like vampires. And then they get involved with this newlywed couple, and all hell breaks loose. Well, I don't know if hell breaks loose, but people end up dead. Let's put it that way. So it's kind of how would you describe this? It's not a horror film. It's more of a yeah. I don't know how to describe. You'll have to watch it. It's like a it's like a horror film with manners almost. You know what I mean? Everybody is acting. Uh, anyways, you'll have to watch it. It's quite interesting. Let's put it that way. Um, uh, then 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. All right, this one stars what's his name from uh, what is your name, buddy? This guy from Office and The Quiet Place, right? So uh, I watched this and I watched this recently, and it's so great that I don't even remember half of it. So I can't really recommend the film because I just watched it within the last couple of weeks and I can't even remember what the fuck the film is about, right? So, okay, so next up is the Matrix 4 film, Deja Vu collection. Basically, I already have the first three films in a trilogy like this, but now they came out with that fourth film. I haven't seen that fourth film yet, so I decided to buy this and get the fourth film, which is the Matrix Resurrections, and it's basically a love story between Neo and Trinity. Now, if you remember in the third movie, Trinity dies right when they try to infiltrate that building, and she ends up dying, and Neo goes on on his own right into the heart of Machine Town, let's put it that way. And then he ends up, um, you think, dying as well, right? Or he ends up captured or whatever. And well, this film takes place after that, and Trinity actually isn't dead, and neither is Neo, and they're both hooked up to a new Matrix. And the new Matrix works because they're hooked up to it, and then these renegade people end up getting Neo out of the Matrix again, and then he goes to get Trinity out of the Matrix, right? So so it's kind of basically a love story, an action love story. So I quite enjoyed it actually. Uh, I didn't see any Matrix movie in like 20 years, so it was quite fun to watch. Now you didn't see Lawrence Fishburne in the film, um, so that's kind of interesting. I guess his character wasn't really needed. I don't know, and other characters you didn't see as well. But uh, I liked it. Uh, Let me know in the comments if you saw it, whether you liked it or not. Some people didn't. So, all right. So that's the Matrix. What do you call it? A quadrilogy? A quadrilogy? All right. Next up is the Epic of Everest. So this is basically a Kino release, right? Kino Classics on DVD before they started putting out Blu-rays. Um, but Kino films are hit and miss because they just put out obscure films. A lot of them are good. Other ones are just forgettable. But I thought this one would be one of the forgettable ones, so I watched it. This is basically, what's his name? What was the guy's name? Him and his, uh, yeah, Mallory and Irvine. All right, so Mallory and Irvine decide that they're going to go climb Mount Everest, right? And nobody really knows whether they actually climbed it because they both died up on the mountain, right? So, um, but all the cinematic footage that they took, their cameraman took, and all that is all documented in this, and it's a gripping thing, man. It's a great documentary, and it's like looking right into the past because this is like 1924, so this is early cinema, right? This is early filmmaking. Yet, Kino cleaned it up really good. And you get to see the Tibetans back in the 1920s, how they were in the 1920s, and like it's not an in-depth look in Tibetan culture back then, but it's kind of like you're kind of like it's like anthropomorphic, it's like anthropology on film, right? And you get to see how they journeyed and where they went, and the cinema of it. I mean, rudimentary as it is really really good, right? You get to see all these big, snowscapes and mountains and everything, and um, and there is no voices in it. It's all because it's pre-voice, right? So they ended up doing it in a way where they'll show the footage and then you'll read. There'll be a reading and then they'll show some more footage. Then you read some more, and then, anyways, it's quite intriguing. It was quite an enjoyable film. I was very 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 surprised that I was going to enjoy that film. I kind of dreaded having to watch it. It's part of my collection. I want to watch all the films in my collection and see which ones I want to keep or not. Well, this one became a keeper because I'm going to keep it because it's really good. And I'm going to watch it again because it's really good. So you haven't seen the Epic of Everest? Watch it. It's really good. All right. So um, next up is Pete's Dragon. All right. So I think, all right, it was directed by Dave Lowery. But this is, Walt Disney is going through a lot of their cartoons. Now, Pete's Dragon, if I remember correctly, was, a mix between, it's kind of like a Roger Rabbit thing where it's half animation and half, uh, you know, uh, live, right? And they kind of mix the two in together, like Mary Poppins as well. Um, I think they did that originally with Pete's Dragon. I haven't seen Pete's Dragon since I was a kid, but what they're doing is they're going through their catalog and doing like live action versions of all their animation features. Right? They've done Dumbo, they've done Beauty and the Beast, they've done what else have they done? They've done Aladdin and a few others. So this is one of them. It's Pete's Dragon. I have not watched this one yet. I just picked it up, but I have seen Pete's Dragon before, so I thought I'd add it to it. All right. Then I found Shaun of the Dead on Blu-ray. I have it on DVD, but I don't think I have it on Blu-ray. So now I have it on Blu-ray. And if you haven't watched this, this is probably the best, zombie comedy of all time. Although, Return of the Living Dead was pretty funny as well. But Shaun of the Dead is quite funny. It made Simon Pegg a household name with Nick Frost. They're basically, underachievers in London, and then a zombie apocalypse breaks out, and they're like unaware of it, and then they finally realize it, and then he turns from this loser that his girlfriend is like going to leave or whatever, turns into this hero, right? So it's quite a fun film, and it's quite funny. All right, so if you haven't seen Shaun of the Dead, you should watch it. All right, so then I found this one, Disney Moana. All right, and this is quite fun. You get to hear The Rock sing, so that's kind of interesting. And the whole it was quite an enjoyable film. So and it's one of Disney's films that isn't, Disney just loves to any animation, any children's type of stuff. They really love to get into it. So when Pixar was putting out films really well, they ended up buying Pixar, right, to add it to their family. And now most of the animation that comes from Disney, it comes out of Pixar, but they will do films that are under the Disney banner rather than under the Pixar banner. And this is one that's just directly from Disney, the computer generated imaging, the computer animation rather than the classical type of animation. So, they did the same thing with a lot of the Studio Ghibli. They bought, the whatever North American rights to Studio Ghibli and then redid a lot of the Studio Ghibli films with modern actors rather than the older translations or dubs, right? So, and here's another example of one. Here's a Bolt. Is another one I quite enjoyed. This one tells about a dog. It's funny, and the dog is voiced by John Travolta. He's fooled by his handlers uh, to be a superhero kind of dog that has super, like if he barks, he makes a sonic explosion. He can do like amazing things. So they because the dogs are kind of simple, they've convinced him that he's like a superhero dog, but actually it's all done um, you know in studio to trick him for a TV show, right? So it's it's quite funny to watch. And then his main handler is a teenage girl who's a spy or whatever, and there's these bad guys always chasing after her, and Bolt has to protect her, and that's voiced by Miley Cyrus, right? So, all right, so here's another example. So this is one of the examples. Here's Disney's Aladdin. This is basically the live action version of Aladdin from the cartoon. All right, Will Smith plays the genie. Now, what was his name? The guy that plays Aladdin is extremely good in this. I don't know his name though. I'll put it down here. I'll show a picture. Will Smith wasn't bad, but when you're used to, if you grew up on Aladdin and you watched the cartoon a lot, like it came out, I was already an adult when it came out, but I was around my nephews and they liked to watch it, so I'd watch it a lot. I wasn't an old man; I was a young man at the time, and they had the Aladdin and Return of Jafar. Both of those films were big when I was like in my 20s. And kids would watch them a lot. So you got used to the genie being Robin Williams. All right, so Robin Williams. All right, you're used to the genie being Robin Williams, and Robin Williams is such a great comedian actor. You know what I mean? He's like, let's say he played the genie better than Will Smith did. All right, and but you're kind of biased towards Robin Williams. You kind of getting biased towards Robin Williams because that's the person that you've always seen, and then when somebody else does the character, you kind of compare it to Robin Williams, and if he doesn't behave exactly like Robin Williams did, then he's out of character kind of thing. When he's not really, he's just making that character his own, right? So, but Will Smith does a credible job of it. But the person that starred in this show was the actor who played um, Aladdin himself. He's extremely good actor. I can't wait to see him in something else. All right, so the Disney's live action version of Aladdin. Next up. Okay, so next up is All About My Mother. All right, this is an extremely good film. If you have not seen it, I would highly suggest you watch this film. This is extremely good. All right, so it's subtitled. It's French, right? So, but basically, it's about a teen boy and his mother. The teen boy has never met his father. Raised by his mother. His mother is an independent woman. All right, and what happens is he convinces his mother to go to this. I think it was a concert, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I saw this, a few weeks. Anyways, he's looking to get a signature to a play. Well, there's this woman and her assistant, and she's the star of this play, right? So he really likes the play, and he wants to get a signature from the actress. So when she comes out after a performance, gets into a car, he runs after the car to get the signature, and then he gets hit by a car and he ends up dead. So now his mother has no son anymore. So um, now she had left uh, her son's father um, when she was pregnant. So his father doesn't even know that he exists, and now he's dead. And she goes searching for his father to tell him that he had a son. All right. So, and the reason why she left him is because uh, he's a transvestite or whatever, right? So, thank you. So he's a transgender woman, basically. So she goes searching for him, and she ends up meeting up uh, with the actor that her son wanted to get a signature from, and then she ends up, because she becomes estranged to her assistant, who is also her lover. She takes actress takes the mother in as an assistant, and then she kind of mothers everybody in this whole film. She becomes a like a mother, like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a surrogate mother to all these characters, right? And it becomes quite interesting. Now, there seems to be a big backlash in everything against transgendered people these days, but this film, it does not portray transgender people in the most positive of lights, because the two transgender, one is a man uh, who dresses as a woman, and he has a lot of mental issues, and another one is basically a prostitute, uh, uh, a transgender prostitute. So they're not like outstanding characters, let's put it that way, in this film. But um, the people who play them play a really good role, and that role is quite convincing. Let's put it that way. And the tenacity, I guess you could say, and the intestinal fortitude of the prostitute one, and her outlook on life, let's put it that way, and how she uh, survives her life, let's say, is at least somewhat admirable in a way. But overall, the film is just, when you go see a film, you don't want to see this, you want to see characters that are out of the ordinary, right? You want to see something that you wouldn't see in real life, because then the film would probably be boring, right? So this is definitely not a boring film. Let's put it that way, and I think you'd quite enjoy it. All right. So next up after that is Kundan. All right. So Kundan is basically a, uh, the life story of the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama that's still alive today, that hasn't gone back to Tibet in his whole life after he left, right? And it's basically about the independence of Tibet, and how the Chinese consider Tibet to be part of China, and how they go about taking back China from the Tibetans, and then the Dalai Lama, leaving and living in exile. It's basically about his childhood and his growing up in Tibet at the time, and it's quite an interesting film. All right. After that is Coming Home. All right. Coming Home is, I may have done these before in a previous video. I'm not sure. These ones I think I've done this one before, but let's and I think I've done this one before as well. But Coming Home is basically, Jane Fonda and John Voight. John Voight plays a Vietnam vet that has uh, lost the ability to use his legs, and Jane Fonda plays an army wife whose husband goes off, and she decides to he gets assigned, and so now she's by herself. So she decides to keep busy by helping volunteering at a veterans facility, and she ends up falling in love with John Voight. And anyways, it's quite an interesting story. Glorious Bastards. I think I talked about this one as well. Basically, it's the film that Tarantino based Inglorious Bastards on, right? Um, it's quite an enjoyable war film. And then we have Hidden Agenda, all right, directed by Ken Loach, and this is all about Northern Ireland and the Troubles. Let's put it that way. And it's quite an interesting film as well. All right, so those are the films. So let's go back to the books. All right, we finished the movies. Let's return to the books and finish the books. All right. So next up is the basic works of Aristotle. This is a modern library classic. The one that directly competes with the Penguin Classics and the Oxford World Classics. Basically, if you want to read Aristotle, you want its complete works. Probably the Bollinger series is probably the best one. The one that's put out by, is it Cambridge? I think it's Cambridge that puts. Does Cambridge put out the Bollinger series? I can't remember. Anyways, so it's a set of 2 volume with blue dust jackets uh, from the Bollinger series. I'll put it up here, and I'll tell you which press it was. I think it's Cambridge, but I may be mistaken. It may be an American, an Ivy League school. I can't remember now. But anyways, it's the best version of getting Aristotle's works in English. But if you want just 1 volume, um, and you want it in paperback rather than in hardcover, this is probably your best shot. All right. This basically has uh, on the soul, on generation and corruption, physics, metaphysics. How do you say that? Nicomachean, ignorant intellectual, ethics, politics, and poetics. All all those volumes in full, and then the selection of his other writings, right? So basically, this is a very good overview of Aristotle. If you want to get just 1 volume, um, this is the one that you should look for. All right. So that's the basic works of Aristotle. All right. Next up is L. Frank Baum's children's classic, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Everybody knows The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. This is the Oxford World Classics version of it. All right. Um, Quite good about, Toto and the Tin Man and so on and so forth. All right. After that is Walter Belt's God and the Gods and the Myths of the Bible. Basically, this is religion and mythology, basically, and it goes through all the different myths of the Bible and put out by Penguin again. All right, so I have not read it. Next up after that is a really nice version by from the Paper Mill Press of Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, which is my favorite Charles Dickens book. All right, and there's a whole volume of these that, I mean, they're all different colored and everything, and they really look nice on a shelf. If you want to decorate a shelf with some classic literature, I think maybe you should investigate Paper Mill Press because they're not very expensive. They're like maybe $20 a volume. All right. And they're really nice. They're kind of like soft hardcover, right? And they do have a ribbon as a bookmark. All right. But they're really nice looking on the shelf. All right. And if you want some, if you don't want to get into the whole leather thing, maybe you're ethically against people using animal skins to bind books. I'm not sure. I'm not personally. So, uh, and I like leather-bound editions. But if you don't, then maybe Paper Mill Press might be an option for you because I don't think any of this is made from an animal. It's all made from uh, plants, and they're still really nice volumes, right? So uh, it seems like I'm trying to sell Paper Mill Press. I'm not. It's just that they put out a really nice product. So uh, and I'll put a selection of the books up to see what to show you what I mean, how they look nice on a bookshelf, right? So I don't know how long term they'll look, but I would just put these in plastic bags, like the ones I do with DVDs or Blu-rays or whatever. I would put this in a bag and protect it, and it will look really nice on a shelf. Well, with a whole bunch of other ones, all of different colors, they look really nice. All right, so that's Great Expectations from Charles Dickens. That's Great Expectations. Next up is the Hackett publication of Hellenistic philosophy, and this basically goes through what? It goes through basically three schools: Epicureanism, if I pronounce that correctly, and intellectual, um, skepticism, another philosophical school, and the one that I seems to describe me the most is Stoicism. Stoicism, it describes Stoicism. Um, so those three main schools back, during Cicero, Plutarch, those days, right? So uh, so if you haven't read it, it's a good read if you like philosophy. And the last two books are really nice editions. First of The Hobbit. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that a beautiful edition of The Hobbit? All right. It's a large book as well, and glossy print. It's not just paper; it's gloss paper print with. It's a really nice version. Um, this new was like $30. So, anyways, The Hobbit is my favorite Tolkien book. I like it better than Lord of the Rings because it's not so long and there's not as many characters involved in it. When you read Lord of the Rings, it's 3 volumes, and you have to really, I mean, if you've read it before the movies came out, the Peter Jackson films, everybody knows them, right? You get to know all the characters from the Peter Jackson films. When you read the book, you're already introduced to the characters. But if you're reading Lord of the Rings as a virgin, let's put it that way, it's your first reading of it, and you haven't seen the films, then it's a really complicated world, and there's a lot of characters in it, and so it takes a few readings to actually get a grip on the whole 3 volume set. With at least that was my experience, anyways. With this, with the Hobbit, uh, it's not. You have a few characters. You have a dragon. You have the main characters. You know which characters are going to be throughout the whole film. You know, film throughout the whole book. Part of the issue when you're reading really, let's say, large tomes is the number of characters are in them, but you can't figure out which character is uh, let me start again. When a novelist writes a book, he's going to have peripheral characters and he's going to have main characters. All right. So if it's a complicated book and a large book, there's going to be a lot of characters in them, and you can't distinguish which ones are going to be sticking around, which ones are going to disappear. Right. So what you're doing at the beginning of the novel is trying to remember all of these characters, so that when the story moves away from one of those characters, but then 50 pages later it kind of returns to that character, or that character comes back in, you remember what was written about him 50 pages before, right? So you're trying to remember all these characters, and if there's a lot of them, it gets quite difficult, right? Uh, and then you don't know which ones are sticking around, which ones are just peripheral. So let's say you read the first 100 pages of a 1,000 page book or an 800 page book. uh, you may have been introduced to like 40 characters, and of those 40, maybe 4 of them are really going to be sticking around for the whole novel. And the other 36 are disappear, right? So, and it's hard to figure out which ones are that way, right? But so that's kind of like what happens in the Lord of the Rings. But in the Hobbit, you kind of know. You got Bilbo Baggins, and you got the dwarfs, and you got the wizard, and they go on a trek, and these are the guys that are going to be the main characters, so it's easy to remember them all, right? And then you have the introduction of Gollum, all right, and the ring and the dragon and all that. It's a really really good This is a really, really good novel. It's really fun to read, and less taxing, let's say, than Lord of the Rings. And it's the prequel to Lord of the Rings, right? So you would read this book first, anyways, and then you would read Lord of the Rings, all right? And this is a really nice hardcover version of it. I found it for like $4. So, and then the last book is another really nice edition of a children's book. That's The Wind and the Willows, with Rat and Toad and Mole, Rat, Toad, and Mole. I think. Remember? You remember this? Did your parents ever read you The Wind and the Willows? Anyways, it's a really nice edition, hardcover edition, um, annotated, right, and illustrated. All right. In the center, it has images from the uh, original early versions of the book and everything, right? So it's quite a beautiful edition. It was $35 new, and I found it like for $4. So it has drawings in it like the original, right? So it's quite a beautiful novel. So I'm going to cover this in Mylar, this dust jacket, so it doesn't get wrecked. And I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it. I think I'm going to keep it and read it to my son, and then maybe I'm going to sell it after I read it, depending on what his reaction to the book is. Right now, I read him Charlotte's Web, and now I'm reading him James and the Giant Peach. So uh, those are the last two books, anyways. All right. So he really enjoyed. If I was to suggest something, and your kid is not my child's now 7, just turned 7, so um, but if you want to introduce the kids to reading, back when they're 3, 4 years old, I mean, those Mr. Men books or Little Miss books are really good. They really enjoy them. I enjoyed them when I was a kid, and then I introduced them to my son, and I've read them to my nephews when they were kids and everything. Really enjoyable. So those are, Little Miss and Mr. books. You probably already know them if you have kids, but if not, Amazon sells the whole collection in one box set for like around $100. So I picked that up. I'm not sure if it's out of print now or not, but I got one of the last copies of it before. I'm assuming they're going to order more. They can't have that out of print. It'll never be out of print. It's such a great series of books, right? Anyway, so all right, I'm digressing. Okay, so that's all the books and that's all the movies that I've watched so far. I still have a bunch more movies that I'm watching, and I will review in the future. I hope you enjoyed this. I was about to say film again, but no. Hope you enjoy this video, and if you do, leave a thumbs up. Think about subscribing, but no pressure. But I would enjoy if you subscribed, and I'll talk to you in my next video. And you have a great day. All right, and bye for now.